Hi everyone, welcome back. It's another episode of Spectator Sports. I'm your host Sebastian Fonseca. Before we get into breaking down episode number 105 with the Paris Olympics and some news around the NFL, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. If you're new to Spectator Sports, please help this channel grow, reach a broader audience. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow, does a massive favor in the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to get audio from this podcast, you can get it on Spotify, and clips from this episode you can have them here on YouTube or on TikTok. Links are in the description. After making my prediction in the most recent Spectator Sports clip, I wanted to go back and revisit the knockout stage as it's finally set heading into the final week of the Olympics. At the top of the bracket, we have France taking on Team Canada, and I put France as a heavy favorite coming into this tournament. I thought them having the host energy juju. They have Victor Wembanyama, Rudy Gobert, and a few really good NBA players across their roster. I thought that they would win Group B quite comfortably, but actually with them faltering at the last hurdle against Germany, that puts them in a pickle as now they're the second best one-loss team and they're faced with a very tough quarterfinal matchup in Team Canada, who's been arguably one of the best teams of this tournament. They've been battle-tested in their group play, but have been able to fend off the opposition on their way to being one of only 3 undefeated teams in this tournament. Now, Canada, as we know, they've been led by SGA, the MVP runner-up of OKC, but a surprise contributor, someone who we probably underestimated, has been RJ Barrett, the Maple Mamba, as he was traded away from the New York Knicks and headed over to his hometown in Toronto, playing for the Raptors. He has had a little bit more of an uptick in the statistical categories across the board. His shooting numbers are up, 3-point percentages are up, and his points per game are up as well. And he's translated this to the changes in the FIBA rules compared to the NBA rules, as the 3-point line, as we know, is a little bit closer. His 3-point numbers continue to rise, and he's actually been the leading scorer for this Canadian team. You also have some surprise contributors like Andrew Nembhard as well. He's been being pretty good on both ends of the court, but I think someone to be a little bit concerned about in this Canadian team is Jamal Murray. He didn't have the best ending to his postseason run with the Denver Nuggets, and that's kind of reflected as he's only been averaging about 5 points in this Olympic play. Now, he can get hot like anyone else, but he's going to have to improve his play, especially in this knockout stage, because they have been going okay so far with SGA and RJ Barrett handling the brute of the load, the scoring load, but definitely need to have a lot more production from Jamal Murray if they are to go far in this Olympics. I also have to commend Dylan Brooks. He has been villainized by countless NBA fans and absolutely has been somewhat deserving of that with his brash nature, his talking off and on the court, but he has been the third most productive player and still been doing his job on the defensive end, at least on the perimeter side, on playing defense for Team Canada. And looking at this matchup, the guard play is so one-sided for Canada. They obviously don't have the front court guys to contend with the trees that are Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama, but I think that really is based off of the guard play. The guards set up the bigs, especially for France, and we haven't seen consistent play. Fournier has been inconsistent, and they really haven't had a orchestrator to be a guy that can also take things off the dribble in case those big men are off the floor or just being covered and out of the play, that they can take it off the dribble and score and finish the possession. It's going to be close, and I wish that this was more of a semifinal matchup rather than a quarterfinal matchup, but we have to pick a winner in these predictions, and I'm going with Canada with this. I think this is going to be their biggest test. Whoever comes out of this matchup is probably going to at least finish with a medal, if not even make it all the way to the gold medal match. Like I said in my prediction clip, I thought that the only way Greece was going to be able to get into the knockout stages was that if Giannis goes bonkers, and he has been, but that's been a reason why they also lost their first 2 games. But in the last game that they needed to win to get in, they had an upset victory against Australia, the defending bronze medalist in the 2020 Olympics. He got some help from Thomas Walkup and Nicholas Kalathis, and those 2 guys have been kind of coming up to par in the last couple of games. You know, group play kind of develops chemistry amongst the entire team, and the Greek team has been able to find a little bit of balance and not be so Giannis-centric or Giannis dependent when he is on the court for offense. They played well as a team, especially on the defensive end, and smothering Australia, I think, is a big feat for Team Greece. Now, they're rewarded with their efforts by playing Germany, a dark horse in this competition, a team that we didn't think would be unbeaten after group play, but yes, they have. They beat Team France in their final group play match quite comfortably, thanks to the amazing play of Dennis Schroeder. I think Dennis has been one of the best players in this Olympics outside of teams of the flag bearer for Germany, and I think he's just on his way to maybe putting a name for German basketball out there, something we haven't seen since the Dirk Nowitzki days. And even when Nowitzki played for Germany, it was a one-man wrecking crew and that was it. But this is a far more well-balanced team, and the fact that, like I said, they could beat a France team is something very impressive. So they are going to be facing Greece, and I think this is where the Cinderella story ends for Giannis and the Greek team. I just think that there's too much talent from top to bottom, too much chemistry. Germany just looks like a different animal, and I think they're just on their way to also getting a medal in this tournament. Going to the other side of the bracket, the bottom half, we have Team USA coasting through their group play with wins against Sudan, Serbia, and Puerto Rico, on their way to being undefeated, and they had the best finish amongst all teams in group play, and they got the number 1 seed essentially in this pot, and they are going to be slated against Brazil, who hasn't been that great in group play. They were able to beat up on lowly Japan by a wide margin and actually got the best margin of the third place teams in terms of point differentials to get one of those last 2 spots in the quarterfinals, and they matched up with Team USA. I don't think that this is going to be a close affair. This is probably the best case scenario out of all the quarterfinalists out there. I think Team USA got the worst team, and they should basically be able to coast unless something catastrophic happens. I anticipate USA being able to lay down their punches early, probably have to put off a rally, but I think they just have so much more talent compared to Brazil, and they should win this quite comfortably. Now, Serbia has been in Team USA's group, and they didn't get off to a good start as the Olympics started, but after responding with a couple wins against South Sudan and Puerto Rico, especially Puerto Rico, they beat them by 41 points. I think that's been able to bode some confidence in Serbia for the knockout stages. Now, they'll be going up against Team Australia, and like I said, they have been a little bit underwhelming, but they still have a lot of grit, grind. They have experience compared to at least recent Serbian players, but I do think that Djokovic is the best player in this matchup, and they still have a fairly good team. Now, maybe unproven, and I think Australia has had a harder group. It's not like they've played trash. They just haven't been winning games. They finished 1 and 2. So it's a little bit of contrasting styles there, but I think I'm going to lean with picking Serbia to advance and setting up a rematch of their group play opener against Team USA. Looking at just the tournament as a whole, we've seen a lot of players have experience and get some playing time, and then some others be kind of cut out of the rotation. Tyrese Halliburton has been a name that has been in and out of the lineup. It's just really hard playing 40 minutes with so many talented guys. There will be times that guys just don't play. And in the second game against Sudan, actually, Joel Embiid didn't even play. And a lot of people who know about how he's been with the whole citizenship thing, him being from Cameroon is one thing, but he was eligible to play for France. I do think he in kind of typical fashion with his NBA career, he took the easy way out, get the gold medal pathway with a loaded deck, something he definitely hasn't had a chance to do with the Philadelphia 76ers. He's had talented rosters, but he's underwhelmed due to either injuries or poor play in the playoffs. But this is somewhere where even where his poor play can be bailed out by a LeBron James, a Kevin Durant, a Steph Curry, someone on that USA team isn't going to let that rope slip out of their hands and let that poor play reflect on the entire team. So it is interesting. He did try to taunt the booing French crowd who had a lot to say and he tried to show off with an air ball. It was sailed wide right. It was off by maybe like a foot and a half. Very bad air ball. It wasn't just a short air ball. It was just off to the right. Very poor showing there. But, Joel at the end of the day will have the last laugh. I think with this, France is going to be lucky to even medal based off of their poor performance in group play, and he'll probably have the last laugh at the end of the day. Let's talk about some tennis. It's been a long time since we spoke about tennis here on the pod, but I mean, in the Olympics, it's a different type of atmosphere. You're looking for players that are trying to make their mark. Sometimes you get a one-hit wonder who maybe hasn't won a ton of majors, but they have a chance to have some international spotlight, even not winning a gold medal, but just medaling in a tournament like this is a big deal. And it meant a great deal to guys like Carlos Alcaraz, the young up-and-coming superstar. He has won French, and he has won the Wimbledon Open only 3 weeks ago in London. And he's looking to complete already what's been a historic 2024 season with winning a gold medal for Spain. But Novak Djokovic, at this point, he has faced some issues with the Olympics. He's had amazing years in terms of tennis play, but in tournaments and Grand Slams, but at the Olympics he has faltered. His best performance is way back in 2008, the Beijing Olympics, with the bronze medal, losing to Rafael Nadal in the semifinals, having to settle for bronze, was his best showing. Remarkably, he's had early flameouts. I remember in 2016, after having a wonderful year, he faced Juan Martín del Potro, got knocked out early, lost early, didn't even medal. In 2020, there was a lot of things against his favor, knocked out early, didn't medal there. So this was really his last chance. He's 37. He has had some injuries picked up as of late, and the 4 years is a long time from now. He would be 41. It's unheard of for somebody to keep playing tennis like that, and at that point, what more does he have left to prove? So everything is going into this tournament. He has won Wimbledon. He has completed the career Grand Slam and has won multiple Grand Slams at each specific site. It's just the Olympics that's out of his trophy case. And a gold medal means so much. Novak, coming into this tournament, he's only 2 months removed from a meniscus surgery. He got it right after the French Open. He pulled out of the French Open after an injury occurred, and he took some time to get that surgery done. He somehow still was able to play in the Wimbledon tournament. I don't even know how that was possible, but you could see that he just didn't have a step that Alcaraz had. Some of it can be attributed to the age gap. It's 16 years. That is a long time that's a big difference in terms of ages between athletes. All those miles on that body for Djokovic compared to the youth, the athleticism that is very much abundant in Carlos Alcaraz. And this year alone, in the Wimbledon tournament, going up again after an epic 5-set match in 2023, Alcaraz won the Wimbledon Open in straight sets, and it wasn't particularly close until maybe that last set, but again, it didn't seem that Djokovic was right. Now Djokovic has had a little more time to rest, recover. He's already played on clay earlier this year, so there's nothing really new to onboard with that, but this time he was able to get everything going. He was very, very dominant last few stages, the quarterfinals onwards. In the semifinals, he looked very, very good. In the final, I didn't think either player had awful games. I mean, neither side was broken serve. They defended breakpoint opportunities. They were great at the net. They were really good at returning. That's very good serves that could have been aces against any other kind of competition. But at the end of the day, there's some differences that you see where Novak has the experience, the ability to stand tall in the face of pressure. It's something we've seen Carlos Alcaraz falter at certain times against Djokovic in the past and against other competition in the past. And the kid will get there. I mean, this kid is already accomplished so much at age 21, I think he is. He's phenomenally young and he's been doing great. But he will absolutely dominate the sport for the next decade and a half whenever Djokovic decides to hang it up. But to really cement himself as the GOAT, he would need this gold medal, I believe. That was the only other disparity, I think, because maybe Nadal didn't win as many Grand Slams, but he does have the gold medal to trump Novak Djokovic and in that golden Super Slam title. In this tournament and against Alcaraz, I thought that Djokovic played very strategic. He played angles, and while he had to give up some phenomenal shots by Alcaraz hit some amazing winners in this. He kept it where there were just sometimes that athleticism wasn't going to be able to get to those amazing shots. He played angles, like I said, he was really good at the net. And another thing is with the nerves complex is that first serve, it was in favor of Djokovic. And in the tiebreakers too, you saw that it was fairly one-sided. It was 7-3, 7-2. You see tiebreakers maybe going up to like 4-5, so it's a little bit closer margin in tiebreaker opportunities, but this one was fairly one-sided, and I think that just goes to the experience that Djokovic has. He was really gunning for it, and you could see the passion after winning it. He was in tears. He was hugging his daughter. After everything he's been through, especially with the recent knee injury, I think this was just a magnificent story to see, very wholesome thing to see with his country finally being able to have a Serb win a gold medal in the sport of tennis. And like I said, I've been a big time Djokovic fan, and I already thought he was the GOAT, but I think this has now put that argument to bed. Maybe Alcaraz does it in 20 years time. He has a successful career as Djokovic has, and continues that, maybe even exceeds expectations. But at least early on, I'm going to say it right now that Djokovic is absolutely the best ever men's player of tennis. The 100-meter final was probably one of the most epic races you'll ever see. Over the weekend, Noah Lyles was going up against some of the new best sprinters. After 2016, when Usain Bolt ran his final Olympics, he laid the gauntlet open for somebody to claim the title as the world's fastest man. Marcel Jacobs took it very briefly in 2021 in the Tokyo Olympics, and yes, he was phenomenal in that Olympics. He even won a gold medal in the 4x100, but you could also see that in this tournament, or at least this race in 2024, that the gauntlet was again opened. Jacobs just didn't have that same type of burst. You've seen Andre de Grasse have a chance at it, but he hasn't been quite the same, just due to age. Maybe that's probably a factor in this, but new names like Kai-Shane Thompson, you have Noah Lyles, who finished with a bronze medal in the 200-meter in the Tokyo Olympics, going up with some of the best names and having that type of sprinters persona, right? You have the ability just to walk the walk, but also talk that talk, right? There's so much banter. He was bringing out Yu-Gi-Oh cards in the middle of races after winning him. Just a lot of theatrics, which is fun to see. And, he was getting a lot of slack because of some comments he made with, world champions, with the NBA world being world champions after you win the NBA finals, because Olympians, they are really going against the world at this point, but that's a debate for another day. So a lot of people were hate watching this. They were really gassing him up, or at least antagonizing him, where he came in second in not just the heat but the semifinal, and instead he didn't even get off to a great start in the final itself. It took the last 30 meters for him to go from last to first. And to have that extra boost or that extra gear to hit that booster to go from that position is truly amazing. I think it was the closest one. It was down to 5,000ths of a second. That is the amount of time barely for a hummingbird to flap its wings, just to put an image out there. But again, Noah Lyles backed up everything. He's a Olympic champion at this event, the world's fastest man, and he delivered, and he's the first American to accomplish this feat since Justin Gatlin did 20 years ago in Athens. So it's just been a really nice Olympics so far for men's track and field. Definitely going to see how the 4x100 goes. There's a lot more Olympic action to break down, which we'll do in the upcoming pod. I wanted to talk about the NFL. It's been a long time, and there's some teams that are facing a ton of pressure facing this upcoming season, namely the Dallas Cowboys, the Chicago Bears, the San Francisco 49ers, and there's so many teams that face a lot of pressure, but let's get into these ones in particular. Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones proclaimed that he was all in after a disappointing finish to the 2023 season. They were able to steal the division after the Eagles' famous collapse of 2023, and they clinched the second seed, and they had very favorable position to at least get to the NFC Championship game. But that came crashing down thanks to Jordan Love. His phenomenal show, tearing up that Dallas defense in AT&T Stadiums, quieting that raucous crowd, and utterly dismantling the Dallas Cowboys to a 48-32 victory. That was a margin that could have been a lot larger if it wasn't thanks to garbage time Dak. And talking about Dak, he is heading into the final year of his massive contract. His massive contract that he somehow was able to win this battle against Jerry Jones in 2021 is now up. And he is a very expensive player. He took up a lot of the salary cap, and what has he done since then? In the 2021 season, he faltered against the San Francisco 49ers and against Jimmy Garoppolo, and next year he won a playoff game on the road against a very poor Tampa Bay Bucs team. Let's just face it, that was Tom Brady's swan song. Faltered again against the San Francisco 49ers. That is another loss there, 1-2, and then last year dropped another home game. So that is 2 home games that he lost as a favorite, winning the division, but not progressing any farther in the playoffs. Has yet to get to a conference championship game. He has never won in the divisional round at all. And for a man making this much money, now that deal worked out to be a bargain as the salary cap continues to expand, increase. It's a move meant for the future. And Dallas mismanaged this, because if they wanted to kind of ride that train again, they would extend him again. So that deal gets spread out, that money gets spread out for more years, and it then looks cheaper on the back end. It may look very expensive on the front end. Now we have so many players, right, to pay. We have CeeDee Lamb, who hasn't shown up to camp because he's due a mammoth deal. Maybe not Justin Jefferson numbers, but he's definitely due a very lengthy, very big contract due to his just amazing production last season. Micah Parsons, while maybe not winning Defensive Player of the Year, he's absolutely up for one this year. He's finished amongst the top 3 in the last few years. He's a well-known talent coming off the edge as an edge rusher. He's put up numbers, but we know that he's tailed off in the back end of seasons and really hasn't been that great in the postseason either. But Dallas has some money problems, and they have only so much money to pay in a salary cap-driven league. This could be their last stand before Jerry says, I've done everything I can. I invested in this roster, but they haven't been able to reward me with playoff victories. And that's just a big thing because, the NFC is absolutely wide open, but I do think there's a talent disparity. The Niners are, I think, the leaders. They have a good chance to progress again to the Super Bowl. Green Bay Packers, they just beat Dallas. They have Jordan Love, who's going to try and build off of that great starting year last season. They have the Eagles, who are in their own division. I think they're favorites to win the NFC East just based off the roster disparity, the roster additions they made. This offseason has been massively improving it compared to the collapse we saw last year. The Detroit Lions are very much up there as well. So those are a few teams already that are ahead of Dallas NFC power rankings, and they would have to go through at least a couple of those to even make the Super Bowl. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works, but I just don't think it's really going to come into anything of real fruition because they have made their bed and now they're going to lay in it. It's just going to be a long, drawn-out, dramatic season that everyone will talk about, but let's just get to January if they're even able to get into the playoffs and see how they actually play. So Chicago has revamped their roster. They have taken Caleb Williams, number 1 overall. They took Rome Odunze at number 9, revamped the defense. It is looking a lot better with last season addition of Montez Sweat. I think that's a great edge rusher in this NFL. Re-signed Jalen Johnson, added Keenan Allen in the offseason. And now it's just a matter of putting this all together. Caleb Williams is going to be at the epicenter of Hard Knocks, which is actually premiering on Tuesday this week. And it's going to be really interesting to see what we get a glimpse into Bears camp because, this Ryan Poles team now, he's been the architect of this rebuild. He's taken Justin Fields and tried to make it work. Didn't really seem to work and shipped him away to Pittsburgh. So he got his guy. And now is Eberflus going to deliver now on the roster that GM Ryan Poles delivered? Because it is now put up or shut up. Because if the Bears have a poor start, if the Bears don't meet expectations, because Justin Fields was able to get to a 7-10 record last year. So if they don't even eclipse that, that is a massive failure for this Bears team. I think they are a fringe playoff team, to be honest. There's a lot of expectations on this Bears team. The division is tough, absolutely, but the NFC, like I said, is very wide open. I do think that they are ahead of a team like the Minnesota Vikings. It'll remain to see how they fare against the Packers and Lions, but definitely is going to be a very interesting season for the Chicago Bears. The 49ers are coming off of a heartbreaking loss. They were just short of coming up from Super Bowl glory, yet again losing to the Kansas City Chiefs the second time in 5 seasons. Different quarterbacks, same result. And now you're trying to run it back. You have very similar roster to last year. You're bringing back Kyle Shanahan yet again. You have Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel. You have Christian McCaffrey. And the defense is very loaded as well, but they definitely have lost some pieces. You're going to see that Hufanga is coming off of an ACL injury. He probably will start off training camp on the pup. Might be ready to start opening day. We'll see. They lost Dre Greenlaw in that Super Bowl to an Achilles tear. I don't think he'll be back in time for the start of the season, so he'll be missing time. So it's really up to Fred Warner to lead that linebacking court. But, they still have Joey Bosa coming off the edge. They have a lot of good defensive line talent, and Javon Hargrave, I think, has been yet again very good as a defensive tackle last year, a Pro Bowl season. But we'll see how this team is able to navigate it because, this team is thinner. I think they're vulnerable, and now this is probably their last year before we got to think about their title window closing because Brock Purdy's numbers, his salary will go up because of an extension. I think Deebo Samuel, depending on how his play is, he might be a roster cap casualty. And we didn't get into the Brandon Ayuk situation. Brandon Ayuk is still not without a contract extension. He has yet to show up for camp. And, he has been subject to a lot of trade rumors this year. There's rumors that he could join the Commanders in D.C. and play alongside McDaniels. But, I don't know if that's going to turn into anything. We'll see. But, if they end up missing Ayuk, that is a massive loss that you just can't replace in the middle of a season. I think, he will end up showing up, but it's a matter of is he going to be in condition? Is he going to be ready? Because it's a contract year. He wants to preserve himself to secure the bag, and he does deserve it. He's been phenomenal the last couple of years. But again, the 49ers are facing another big pressure-tested year. They are favorites in this conference. They should be the favorites of this conference. They have the best roster, probably one of the best play callers and coaches, and we'll see how not only the offense but the defense responds after coming up so close in last year's Super Bowl. The Philadelphia Eagles made a lot of headlines after their big collapse last year. They were able to take over 2 new open coordinator gigs. They got Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio to take over as offensive and defensive coordinators respectively. And I mean, they're definitely upgrades compared to what they had before. I like the signings. I like the upgrades at all over the roster. Bring in Saquon Barkley, already huge addition. He is coming off an injury, yes, that has been the whole thing. I think Giants fans are just going to say that all the time. That's fine. But, you know, the Eagles don't rely on one back either. They do running back by committee. It's not just one guy shouldering the load. Have a really good offensive line. Now, sans Jason Kelce, who retired, but still have Lane Johnson. You have really good Jordan Mailata. Landon Dickerson is a Pro Bowl talent guard. I think he could be all pro coming up this year. That's a very big possibility. Offensively, they look really, really good. Jalen Hurts has been great in training camp. I don't know if he's going to play this preseason, but he could play a couple of series just to make sure that there's no rust, because the Eagles did look a little rusty coming into the opener last year. Defensively, it's definitely a work in progress as well. The defense has lost Fletcher Cox, a big veteran, but Jalen Carden, I think, is going to get a elevated role under this Vic Fangio defense. You're going to look for Josh Sweat to replicate what he could do, because after a very good start last year, he just was a non-factor. Brandon Graham's going to be playing his last season. You're going to see what the new signing in Bryce Huff does. I'm really excited to see what he does in a extended role. Definitely, again, the defense, in terms of the middle linebacking core, it's going to be a weak point. Let's just face it. They don't use dollars there, and we see how they can adjust to making another switch there. I really do like them bringing in CJ Gardner-Johnson. He brings some physicality, some swagger to that secondary. He was great in limited action in Detroit, and now he's back in Philly. Darius Slade just looks fast now in training camp. He's going stride for stride with A.J. Brown, one of the biggest, fastest receivers in the league, after suffering a knee injury late last year. So I think he'll be back to his usual Pro Bowl form. The CB2 spot is wide open. On the outside, we have Keely Ringo, the Georgia star from a couple seasons ago, and now he has a full year in the NFL. You have Quinion Mitchell, their first-round draft pick. He is definitely getting some reps, but the surprise, I think, front runner so far is Isaiah Rodgers. He was suspended all last year due to gambling violations, and that's just something of itself. We have people who commit domestic violence out there, and yet they're getting shorter suspensions compared to people who gamble. Weird league, no fun league. Roger. Isaiah Rodgers has looked great in camp. He has the closing speed. He has trained so hard away from this team. And it'll be a really nice story to see if he's actually to finish this off and lock up the starting outside corner gig. You have the inside gig that's also wide open. You're seeing Quinion Mitchell also there in the slot. It's really open now because Cooper DeJean suffered a hamstring injury. I thought he was going to be the favorite to start in the nickel, but we'll see what happens. But it's nice to have this type of depth, and it's also quality depth. It's not just like you have a bunch of scrubs, and yes, that's depth, but it's healthy bodies, but now it's like talented depth, and that's something we haven't seen in the Philadelphia secondary in quite some time. It was very top heavy in 2022, but this year it's just a very well-rounded, talented room of defensive backs, and I'm very excited to see what it could turn into. Can they win this division? Absolutely, they should win the East. Now, a question, can they contend with San Francisco? Because they are aligning with them very much so. The roster is almost identical in terms of quality talent, the investments they've made to certain positions, but now it's just going to come down to putting on your chin strap and playing 17 games and seeing how the standings work out. So that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Remember, to help this channel grow, we need your help. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, everyone.